I have some vague memories of going into a bomb shelter, being carried into a bomb shelter.
The Germans were approximately 30 or 40 miles away from Alexandria, and the American government suggested that all American citizens evacuate from Egypt.
The only ones that were allowed to come were U.S. citizens and children 6 and under. That was a law. The only ones that fit that bill were my mother, Benny, and I.
And she said, how can I go and tear 2 fingers out of my hand? Don't worry, Rose, don't worry, Rose. In 3 months, 6 months, we'll be right behind you.
In June 1941, my mother and my 2 younger brothers left Alexandria for America.
I remember saying goodbye, waving, and I remember water.
We were on the ocean for 3 months.
And on that boat were the Japanese delegation that left.
I always wonder, why did the Japanese leave at that time, Alan? Could it be that they were also called back from their government?
Whether or not the government knew or had any idea that there's going to be a Pearl Harbor, I don't know. Because as soon as they left, about 2 months, 3 months later...
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. Japanese have attacked
that
Pearl
meant
Harbor,
that's going to be a long-lasting war. And the doors closed in Egypt. Nobody going in, nobody going out.
His best friends are now the declared enemies.
Yeah, he was very upset. Very, very upset. Everything stopped. Everything stopped.
I can only try to remember through the eyes of a 3-year-old and as a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old who was anticipating my father coming home any day and looking through the albums every day and seeing pictures of my father and my grandmother and my brother and sister and asking my mother almost on a daily basis, when is Daddy coming home? Soon, soon. And this is what I went through for 4 years.
I think by sending us over, he was committed that his future was no longer in Egypt. He wouldn't have sent us over and then brought us back. His future, he knew, was in the United States, but he probably never realized it would be as traumatic for him. His whole world had crumbled. When he left Egypt to come to this country, he was devastated.
I will always be grateful to Egypt where I grew up, had my education, made enormous friends, and spent the best years of my life. I shall never forget your wonderful, hospitable country, and will always try my best to promote a better understanding of the real spirit of Egypt and its people. God bless Egypt and its leaders.
Yahya al-Malik.
What does that mean?
Long live the king.
When we did have the reunion, it wasn't what it should have been. It should have been, well, we're going to live happily ever after.
There was always the Egyptians versus the Americans versus the Egyptians.
It was like 2 different families.
My brother Mark and I went to private schools, French schools, and then English schools.
We grew up in Bedford-Stuy, the Williamsburg area. We were out in the street all day long.
Granted, there was a culture difference, and granted, we were more Americanized. We came here from 41 to 45, but what it was a dominance. We're taking over this quiet, peaceable house, and we're going to turn it into an upheaval.
It was a terrible cultural warfare.
We infiltrated their territory. I'm taking over my brother's bed, I'm taking over my brother's room.
There were constant battles. There were times when Mark and I didn't speak to each other for almost a year, I would say.
My brother Mark and I did not want to take orders from my mother. Whatever my mother would cook, I would say my grandmother made it better. And also the fact that we had left my grandmother behind was always a bit of a heartache.
The thing that I might have resented is when everybody would speak French. It had now become a new culture, and I was excluded from the culture.
And we did speak foreign languages among ourselves, and they felt left out, that they didn't understand.
Those were violent years emotionally. You didn't know at the drop of a hat that the house could literally explode.
The situation between my mother and my father was very tense. My mother had a job, he didn't. His business deals did not come through. He lost a lot of money.
It was a very big come down for him, from being what he was to a nothing when he came to America.
Well, first of all, he was a big fish in a little pond in Egypt.
He was a nothing in America. He was a very easygoing person. He was very, very soft-spoken. He wasn't very, very aggressive. He wasn't mean. And for him, the life that he had in Egypt is different than it is here. When he walked down the street, he'd see friends, he'd see acquaintances. Hi, how are you? How you doing? Hey, how are you? How you doing? When he came to America, it was a very, very cold feeling. You don't know anybody. You have to start from scratch. He was a lamb into a lion's den.
What do you know about the food, clothing, and medicine that he sent to Japan after the war?
My mother used to pick up things here and there for Japan, for Japan.
Who do you think carried them over to the post office? In my mind at that time, I think of the Japanese as enemies, as villains because of all those war movies, but yet they were his friends.
It's very simple. His heart was not American. His heart was part Japanese.
My dear Mr. Joe, today we received with many thanks a package which you sent on May 29th and contained the following articles: 5 blouses, jackets, 1 bottle of 3 caps, 1 bottle of 1 can of cocoa, 2 bags of 1 candy, can of dried chocolate, 1 box of candy coated gelatin, 3 packages of drops, 1 box 2 cans of craft whole milk, 1 box of 2 jars of cheese, 1 can of candy, coffee royals coated chocolate, 1 box, 1 bottle, 2 pounds, 100 tablets cane sugar. These are the most precious presents we have ever received. My father used to say, Mr. Casuto is the most kind man. He's the kindest man in the world.
I think my father was extremely devoted. He didn't forget friendships, and he felt sorry for all these people.
When the war was over, Japan lost everything. Completely destroyed, like after the big earthquake.
How about Japanese industry? What was the state of Japanese industry?
Almost nothing. Bombed out. The only machine we had and the only skill we had, textile industry.
Japan had no money to buy cotton, no money to buy products. So they started a barter system with Egypt.
We import raw cotton, we had to exchange leftover Japanese merchandise from during the wartime. With that, Japan could export textile merchandise outside, brought in dollars, and buy food.
So getting raw cotton into Japan after the war...
That's a vital thing. To realize that deal, we need somebody in Egyptian side. And of course we had, Mr. Casuto.
Why is he going away? We were separated for 4 or 5 years, and now he's home for a year.